Thanks, Mick. This 2.9 million figure gives us just a hint of the failure that is happening in this state, and the fact that we can purchase credits from Slovakia gives us another hint that the entire EU trading system and sharing efforts are a form of a giant accountancy trick. I think you know this, Minister, and as someone said before, it's like a medieval indulgence that allows you to buy your way out while you continue to sin. The full cost of carbon credits may well go over 120 million in recent years, and even this figure barely touches on the future costs, which are in the region of €8 billion by 2030. And despite 27 COPs and various lofty declarations, the levels of CO2 in the atmosphere rise and continue to rise. And far from reaching the inadequate targets that were set for reductions, this government is overseeing an increase in emissions. And this week, as reported by the Sunday Business Post, we find that Ireland is a virtual shadowlands. A strange virtual reality exists here. Not only are we a tax haven for corporations and banks, not only do we operate a shadow banking sector and a shadow taxing sector, but we also now seem to have a shadow energy sector where hyperscale data centres have as much energy as the official state national energy grid. And it would be a mistake to think that these kinds of trades are okay or in any way progressive in dealing with the climate crisis. The Irish state, as I have said, has purchased over 120 million in previous years. The NTMA has invested World Bank funds and trades in various schemes, as well as having credits from previous years, and all of these are a form of climate denial as far as we are concerned in people for profit. A giant accountancy trick that pretends to deal with human greatest existential crisis by retendering market mechanisms and adopting neoliberal economic jargon, and thinking somehow that we can imagine CO2 out of the atmosphere. The reason Slovakia has credits to sell is not because it's a paradigm of climate action virtue, but in reality it does mean that the state's credit will not even reach its own targets. According to the EU, Slovakia will fall well short of its own 2030 targets, while its emissions rose by 13% by 2020 compared with 2005. So this farce means that this state, which is failing to reduce its own emissions, buys made-up credits from a state with rising emissions, which will also fail to meet its targets, in order to comply with an accountancy exercise so that we can tell each other at great length that we are addressing the threat to humanity's future. Carbon credits, whether under this effort-sharing scheme or the EU trading scheme, are fraudulent in the meaning of the word. They are efforts to marry the needs of the market and capital expansion to the needs to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that cannot be married or reconciled. The promised shake-up in the EU schemes will not address the fundamental flaws that lie in the whole carbon trading idea. We cannot trade our way out of climate crisis, and we cannot use the market and capital expansion to deal with a crisis caused by markets and capital expansion, driven by the overuse of fossil fuels on our planet. I believe you know this, Minister, and this is a fraud and a set-up to make it look like we're dealing with climate catastrophe on the planet and doing our bit, when in actual fact it's a pure accountancy trick.